Do you believe that right in the heart of the world's financial capital, there are children growing up without knowing what their home looks like? The truth is that in London, on average, each classroom currently has at least one homeless student. While tourists are busy spending extravagantly in Westminster, the district authorities are struggling to spend millions of pounds each day just to rent temporary hotels for more than 1,000 people sleeping on the streets. Alarmingly, in the epicenter of Newham, nearly 59 out of every 1,000 households are living in temporary accommodations. This crisis is no longer a faint shadow. It is a brutal reality devouring the public budget with a horrifying figure of £4 million per day across the city. The 10 key areas below are not only hotspots you need to be cautious of avoiding, but also living proof of a welfare system on the brink of collapse. Is the place you live in on this list? Let's start with the first nightmare. Do you remember a glamorous Westminster of the 80s, where the luxury of Leicester Square or the Strand is the pride of an entire empire? But today, if you stroll here as night falls, the most dazzling thing is not the neon signs of the theatres, but perhaps the thermal foil of those who have chosen the sidewalk as their bed. Westminster today is not only the centre of power, but also the capital of cardboard boxes. Numbers don't lie, but they know how to shock us. In the third quarter of 2025, there were as many as 1,053 people sleeping outdoors here. If we consider the entire period of 2024/25, this number rises to 2,612 people, double that of the neighbouring Camden district. How paradoxical it is that a system is pouring millions of pounds each day into temporary accommodation hotels to hide its failures right next to luxury shops where tourists are still busy spending. The rate of households living in temporary accommodation here reaches 33.6 per 1,000 households. We are witnessing a social welfare system collapsing right where it was born. The paradox is that Westminster, which is home to the most support services, inadvertently becomes a magnet, attracting all the despair of London. And how do we treat them? Instead of a roof over their heads, the system sends them eviction orders from public spaces and new criminal justice bills threatening to fine even those who don't have a single penny to their name. You see, it seems we are prioritising cleaning up the view over saving a life. If we have enough budget to preserve centuries-old heritage buildings, why don't we have enough to preserve the dignity of the people who are lying under the eaves of those very buildings? What do you think about the government spending millions to rent hotel rooms instead of building real homes? Leave your comments below. We need to hear from those who have seen London at its peak. But Westminster is just the tip of the iceberg. Step away from the spotlight and head east, where the numbers begin to scream in a much more brutal way. If Westminster embodies the contrast of the High Street, then Newham is where the most heartbreaking unknowns of London are kept. Here you might not see as many tents along the streets as in the West End, but don't let appearances deceive you. Newham is leading the entire capital with a statistic enough to make anyone shudder. 58.9 out of every 1,000 households are living in a state of homelessness. Let's do a little calculation for every 17 households you pass by. There will be one that doesn't truly have a proper roof over their head. This is not a story about people sleeping under bridges. This is a silent and bitter urban migration. Thousands of families in Newham are being imprisoned in makeshift rental rooms, expensive guest houses that the public budget has to bear. Can you believe it? The homelessness rate in this district is nearly double that of the splendour of Westminster. What is the worst part? It's the children. Newham contributes significantly to the number of 85,000 children trapped in temporary housing across London. While we continue to take pride in an advanced education system, the reality is that on average, each classroom has at least one student who doesn't know where they will sleep tonight. The system seems to be operating a laboratory of failure. Soaring energy prices, rampant inflation, and policies cutting subsidies for third children have pushed even those with jobs into precarious situations. The people of Newham are facing a cruel choice: buy food for their children or pay to keep a roof over their heads. Social housing now seems to have become a luxury concept, more of a fortunate gift than a basic right of citizens. The community fragmentation is happening daily as families are continuously relocated from one temporary accommodation to another. We are trying to build a future for London, but we are laying that foundation on unstable short-term rented hotel rooms. What do you think? How sustainable can a community be when its most basic foundation, a roof over one's head, has been turned into a luxury item? Are we investing in the wrong place by spending money to maintain temporary solutions instead of building a real home? Please leave your thoughts in the comments section. And now, let's turn our attention to North London, where dark corners are hidden right beneath the busiest stations in the world. Leaving the makeshift rooms in Newham, let's pause for a moment at King's Cross or St Pancras Station. These are symbols of London's constant movement, where high-speed trains connect the UK with Europe. However, right beneath those magnificent architectural arches, Camden is hiding an uncomfortable reality. 975 people chose the sidewalks as their sleeping place during the 2024/25 period. This number makes Camden the district with the second highest number of people sleeping outdoors in the capital, second only to Westminster. You see, there is a bitter irony when the most prosperous transport hubs become the final stop for those who have nowhere else to go. The local council here is not entirely inactive. They have built about 1,780 new homes, but this number is really just a drop in the ocean compared to the target of 4,850 homes that still seems far off. The consequence of a decade of cuts to healthcare and social welfare budgets is becoming starkly evident. Public services in Camden are being overwhelmed to the point of suffocation. Many of the people you see lying on the streets not only lack a roof over their heads, but they also carry deep psychological scars. Instead of receiving medical treatment and stable housing, the system seems to choose the path of criminalising poverty, inadvertently pushing them into deeper isolation. Camden is also where you can most clearly see the ruthlessness of the legal loophole known as Section 21, where private tenants are thrown out onto the streets without any valid reason, just to make way for new real estate values. We are living in a city moving at the speed of light, but it seems that this whirlwind is willing to throw the slowest people off their orbit. Have you ever wondered why a society can operate high-speed trains across continents, but is powerless to connect a mental health patient with a basic shelter? Are we investing in distant journeys while forgetting to ensure a safe haven? Right at home. Of course, this crisis is no longer confined to the central area. It is spreading like an oil slick to the west, to places we once thought were safe. Ealing. This hotspot in the western London borough, once considered a peaceful and stable suburb, has just experienced a painful leap. Ealing unexpectedly rose to the 4th position in the city, with 723 people sleeping outdoors. You see, this crisis is spreading like an oil stain, leaving no area untouched. The truth is, the rent prices here have far exceeded the affordability of the working class. The people you see, huddled in parks or under doorways in Ealing, are not all drunks or immigrants, as the old stereotypes suggest. Many of them are actually low-wage workers, people who once had stable jobs but were thrown out of their homes by the whirlwind of inflation and rising rents. How ironic it is, while we are busy discussing economic growth, the local budget in Ealing is severely deficit just to cover emergency services. The system seems to be playing a game of catching shadows, trying to patch up the gaps left by national housing policies over the past decade. Trust in government intervention measures is plummeting as the number of first-time homeless individuals is skyrocketing. The most heartbreaking aspect is the isolation. In the suburbs, homelessness carries a much darker and lonelier hue compared to the bustling centre. The children in these families are directly threatened in terms of educational opportunities, their futures stifled before they even begin. Ealing is gradually turning into a new pocket of poverty, where the old tranquility is being replaced by the harsh reality of homeless lives. What do you think when even the safest suburbs are starting to see tents appearing? Could this be the death knell for the dream of a stable London? What have we missed in our planning strategy? Or have we simply been too indifferent when the storm is just beginning in the distance? Reflect on this spread for shortly. I will take you back to the River Thames, where the contrast between the rich and the poor reaches a level of absurdity that perhaps even the most satirical novelists could not imagine. Tower Hamlets is perhaps the place that most starkly and painfully exposes the wealth gap in London. Look at the dazzling glass skyscrapers of Canary Wharf, where the flow of global finance never ceases. But right at the foot of those steel and glass gods, a crazy paradox exists. For every 41 residents here, there is one homeless person. This is the highest rate in the country, a figure enough to render any speech about prosperity hollow. You see, rental prices in this district are skyrocketing at a terrifying rate, about 20% each year. This real estate frenzy is not just numbers on a chart. It is a massive, sweeping broom, pushing the working class, those who have held on here for generations, out of their own neighbourhoods. The contrast reaches an absurd level when the banking tycoons step out of their luxury apartments only to glide past 209 people curled up on the sidewalk right at the foot of the tower. But the greatest tragedy does not lie only with those sleeping on the streets. That is thousands of people living the sofa surfing life, sleeping on friends' sofas, clinging to the last resilience of the community before being completely thrown out. Even middle-class families are now starting to fall to the fringe of the housing market. The consequence of the right-to-buy policy from decades ago is leaving a vast gap. We have sold off all the public housing, and now there is nothing left for those who truly need it. In an area that contributes significantly to the country's GDP, the fact that children suffer from mental health issues due to the lack of stable housing is a moral failure. The legal loophole, Section 21, is operating at full capacity here, turning the eviction of tenants into a tool for optimising real estate profits. The welfare system seems to have fallen asleep or simply abandoned the working class people right when they needed a support the most. So in the end, those who serve the prosperity of Canary Wharf, the cleaners of the buildings, the security staff or the cafe servers, where do they sleep when night falls? Can we truly take pride in a society where extreme wealth is just a step away from extreme homelessness? And if Tower Hamlets is a shock to the senses, then the next borough I'm about to take you to will be a real shock to the numbers teetering on the brink of bankruptcy. If you want to see a classic example of how a system can devour itself, just look at Brent. Here, the homelessness crisis is no longer just a social issue. It has turned into a financial disaster. Can you believe it? Every day that passes, the Brent Council has to spend up to £100,000 just to pay for hotel rooms and temporary housing. That's more than £36 million each year, a huge amount that should have been used to build schools or repair roads, now flowing straight into the pockets of short-term hotel owners. The financial collapse is no longer a forecast. It is right before our eyes. The District Council has had to issue a red alert about the risk of bankruptcy. The reason is very simple. They are being squeezed between skyrocketing temporary housing costs on one side and a long waiting list for social housing on the other. Currently, there are 33,000 households in Brent waiting for housing. You heard that right, that's nearly 1/10 of the entire district's population. This deadlock reaches a ridiculous yet bitter level when you look at the waiting times. If you are a large family in need of a 4-bedroom house, you might have to wait 20 years. Even a small two-bedroom apartment would cost you more than a decade of waiting in vain. Meanwhile, 2,266 households are living on in cramped B&B hotels, where the concept of temporary has stretched into months, even years. The plan to build 1,700 new homes by 2028 sounds grand, but in reality it only meets less than one-third of the demand. Meanwhile, the process of urban renovation continues to silently push long-time residents onto the streets, along with the pressure from 176 people sleeping on the streets each night. Brent is living proof that a system is spending money just to maintain poverty instead of eradicating it. We are paying to buy temporary solutions while the very foundation of society is crumbling from within. Are we implementing a relief policy or participating in the most futile waste in history? Is it fair for a generation to spend their entire youth just waiting for their name on the housing allocation list? Please leave your comments, as the deadlock in Brent is just one aspect of the economic puzzle. Now let us head south, where under the shadow of the historic bridges, the story takes on a much more sombre and stark tone. Goodbye to the dry numbers. In Brent, let us head south of the River Thames, where Lambeth is telling a sad story under the shadow of historic bridges. Waterloo, a name that evokes glorious victories, is now a focal point of despair, with 192 people recorded sleeping outdoors. But that number is just the tip of the iceberg, as Lambeth is also bearing the burden of 32.2 homeless families for every 1,000 households. You see, the underpasses and riverside areas, once dream destinations for tourists, are now filled with tattered tents. There is a painful irony when these iconic architectural structures become the last fortresses for the most vulnerable. The severe shortage of affordable housing has pushed them down here, turning under the bridge into bedrooms and sidewalks into living rooms. Lambeth is the place that has borne the brunt of social welfare budget cuts over the past decade. Issues like crime or mental health are not being addressed at their roots. They seem to be merely swept aside. Instead of being healed, the homeless here are often labelled as nuisances by new legislation. We seem to be prioritising punishing poverty rather than finding ways to solve it. The Early Intervention Act of 2017 seems to have lost steam in this area. While charitable organisations have to shoulder the responsibilities that should belong to the state, every nightlines of people waiting for free meals still stretch endlessly in a haunting silence. There is a significant moral injury when you witness the isolation of these people, right in the heart of a bustling and prosperous community. Children in homeless families in Lambeth are growing up with a bleak future, where the concept of safety is merely a luxury. The pressure on the police and public health services is at an extreme level. We are using temporary measures to cope with a systemic crisis. The failure to protect tenants from Section 21 eviction orders has turned Lambeth into a living testament to how out of sync our welfare system is. Is the presence of those tents a warning bell that we are deliberately ignoring to keep our sleep undisturbed? Don't be quick to answer, because not far from there in a neighbouring district, a record-long waiting list is suffocating the last hopes of the working-class people. Suppose life is a race in Southwark. It is a race where the finish line seems to be continuously moving further away. 17,500 is the number of households currently waiting for social housing in this area. To give you a clearer picture, while the demand is enormous, the district authorities can only provide a mere 1,034 new houses each year. Let's do a simple yet brutal calculation. At this rate, a family that registers today will have to wait at least 17 years to get an official home. 17 years, that is the entire period from the birth of a child until they are almost grown. Is there anyone who can still hold on to hope after 2 decades of waiting in vain? It is this deadlock that has driven 207 people to sleep on the streets, as they simply no longer have the patience to wait for a miracle from the old forms. In Southwark, rising real estate prices have turned traditional working-class neighbourhoods into luxurious islands for the upper class. This whirlwind not only changes the appearance of the streets, but it also squeezes the wallets of renters. Even the apartments labelled as affordable have become out of reach due to inflationary pressures. You will see families living in temporary long-term housing, moving from one room to another for many years. The faith in the social housing system, once a source of pride for England, is collapsing right here. The housing strategy 2024 to 2029 seems to remain just words on paper, while the harsh reality is crushing the spirits of the residents. The constant fear of eviction and the psychological trauma of living off are gnawing at poor families day by day. Southwark is a testament to the complete helplessness of the local authorities in the face of the terrifying power of the real estate market. We are witnessing a crisis where human dignity is being valued by the waiting time. So when the waiting time for a roof over one's head takes up half of a person's working life, do we still have the right to call it a public service? Or is this actually a subtle refusal wrapped in endless administrative procedures? Consider their patience for just to the north. Another gentrification movement is quietly carrying out a social purge, erasing communities that have existed for generations. Look at the art cafes and expensive studio apartments in Hackney. This place used to be the land of the working class, the soul of indigenous communities bonded over many generations. But under the guise of urban development, a silent whirlwind has swept through, turning this place into a paradise for the upper class, while transforming the old residents into mere shadows in their own homeland. Although the official statistics only record 105 people sleeping on the streets, that is just the surface. The terrifying reality lies in hidden homelessness. That means thousands of people are having to sofa surf, sleeping on the sofas of acquaintances living in old vans, because they can't afford the skyrocketing rent prices due to luxury developments. While the buildings become more beautiful, it is also the time when the system exploits the Section 21 loophole to evict old tenants without any reason. Children in Hackney are paying the price for this luxury by constantly changing schools because their families are losing their homes. The mental health of an entire community is being crushed as stability becomes a luxury. We are witnessing Hackney gradually losing its soul in the fierce real estate race where the social welfare system has completely fallen behind in the face of actual living costs. What do you think when a neighbourhood becomes more glamorous but the local residents have to hit the streets? Who is that beauty really for? Are we really developing urban areas, or are we actually carrying out a silent social cleansing with money? The final stop on this journey is Haringey, where the homelessness crisis is no longer a social problem but has become a financial black hole. Can you believe it? In just 3 short months, the district authorities have overspent their budget by £1.6 million just to maintain services for the homeless. More than 4,000 applications for housing assistance poured in within a year, while the number of families having to stay in B&B hotels continued to rise. Local authorities admit they are doing everything they can in desperation. The millions of pounds from the Homelessness Prevention Fund are essentially just temporary patches on a sinking ship. Haringey currently records 144 people sleeping on the streets, but that is just the tip of the iceberg of a welfare system on the brink of total collapse. This deadlock is the most severe warning when the cost of temporary housing erodes all resources allocated for education and healthcare. We are devouring the future to address the hunger of the present. Haringey does not just represent a district, it represents the impotence of a local system in the face of a national disaster. The homeless families here are trapped in a cycle of half-hearted support where the hope of social housing by 2031 seems like a promise too late. If a government has to scrape together its last coins just to maintain basic living conditions for residents, what can we expect in terms of long-term development? Is this crisis due to our lack of money, Or is it actually because we lack the strong political will to change the game? The journey through London's 10 epicenters is not just a trip to watch the numbers dance on the budget sheet. It is an autopsy of the decaying body of a capital city that we once believed to be invincible. London is no longer just the city of glass skyscrapers or ancient palaces. It is gradually becoming a maze of temporary hotel rooms and cardboard under the bridges. When 85,000 children have to grow up without knowing the shape of their own house key, it is no longer a political crisis. It is a sentence for the future. We are witnessing a system that is devouring itself, using your tax money to nurture transience instead of laying the bricks for stability. Perhaps the price of the prosperity we always take pride in is the ruthless dismissal of those who contributed to its construction. If a safe home has now become a luxury privilege instead of a basic right, what will be the next luxury stripped away from us? Are we progressing forward, or are we merely putting a facade on a society that is rotting from within? If you feel these stories need to be heard, if you also carry a sense of nostalgia for a London of kindness and sustainable welfare, please help me spread this video. Press like so that the YouTube algorithm knows that real social issues deserve more attention than frivolous entertainment. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next in-depth investigations into the hidden corners of the land of fog. And most importantly, share this video with your friends and peers. We need a serious discussion before it's too late. The content in this video is based on statistical reports, public data and press sources up to the years 2024 to 2026. The remarks are of a personal analytical nature and intended to provoke discussion, not to target any specific individual or organisation. Illustrative images and metaphorical phrases are used to highlight the social reality. We advise the audience to always engage in critical thinking and verify information from various official sources. All social intervention actions should be carried out through charitable organisations and authorised legal agencies